Imagine this. One day you're sitting across from a woman on a date. You've known her for all of 60 minutes. She's ordered half the menu: lobster, steak, 3 rounds of drinks, dessert she doesn't even touch. And when the bill comes for $1,200, she looks at you with those big innocent eyes and says, expects you to pay, because that's what men have always done. But this time something is different. This time, the man looks her dead in the eye, pulls out his card, pays exactly his half, stands up, and walks out without a word while she sits there stunned, mouth open, realizing the game just changed forever. And here's the part that's going to shock you by the end of this video. This isn't just happening in one city, one restaurant, or one viral TikTok. This is happening every single night now, all across the Western world, and women are starting to get arrested for it. Stay until the very end because I'm going to show you footage of women literally crying in handcuffs outside restaurants, begging the cops to let them go because they can't pay a $900 bill they racked up thinking some man would save them. You do not want to miss this. If you're getting value from this angry guy content right now, smash that like button right now. Share this video with every man you know who still thinks he has to pay for everything. And subscribe with notifications on because we're dropping truth bombs like this every single week. Also, if you want to actually protect the money you've worked so hard for and learn how to grow real wealth in this collapsing economy, go check out Angry's Crypto Academy right now. The link is in the description. That's where I teach men step by step how to buy, sell, trade, and most importantly, safeguard your assets so no one, especially not some entitled princess on a date, can ever take it from you. Click that link and join the Academy today. And if you're enjoying these videos and you want to keep the angry guy fueled and making more content, buy me a Red Bull through the link in the description. It keeps me going. And I appreciate every single one of you that supports the channel that way. Let me paint the picture for you that you're never going to forget. Picture a packed upscale restaurant on a Saturday night, the kind of place where the entrees start at $80 and the wine list looks like a car payment. There's a beautiful woman sitting at a table, perfectly done hair, perfect makeup, designer dress, the whole package. Across from her is a man who matched with her on an app 3 days ago. She spent the entire dinner talking about herself, barely asked him a single question, ordered the most expensive items on the menu without even glancing at the prices, took 3 bites of the lobster, posted 12 selfies to her story, and now the bill comes. $1,147. The man looks at the bill, looks at her, pulls out his phone, opens his banking app, calculates exactly what he ordered, puts down $600 cash for his half plus tip, stands up, says, "Have a good night," and walks out the door. She sits there blinking, thinking he's coming back from the bathroom. 5 minutes pass, 10 minutes. The waiter comes back and says, "Ma'am, we still need payment for the remaining balance." She starts stuttering. No, he's paying. He's just in the bathroom. Another 10 minutes. The manager gets involved. She starts getting loud. "This is ridiculous. He invited me here." Manager says calmly, "Ma'am, he already paid his portion and left 20 minutes ago. We need payment now." She opens her purse, $14 and some lip gloss. That's it. She starts frantically texting him. No response. He's gone. Manager calls the police. 20 minutes later, she's outside on the curb, mascara running down her face, explaining to 2 officers why she can't pay a restaurant bill she knowingly racked up. And brothers, this is not one story. This is not 2 stories. This is happening, multiple stories, every single night now in every major city. You see, women have been running this particular scam for decades. They call it foodie calls. There's even been academic studies on it. Researchers found that a significant percentage of women openly admit to going on dates purely for the free meal with zero intention of ever seeing the man again. They dress up, they flirt just enough to keep him hooked through dinner. They order the most expensive things on the menu because if he's taking me out, he can afford it. And then they disappear into the night with a full belly and his wallet lighter by several $100s. And for decades, men just took it. They took it because society told them that's what a real man does. You pay for everything. You don't complain. You don't question it. You just smile and pay, because if you don't, you're not a gentleman. But something broke in men over the last few years. The social contract got shredded itself right in front of our eyes, and men started asking a very dangerous question: why? Why am I paying $1,000 to sit across from a woman who doesn't respect me, doesn't value me, doesn't even pretend to be interested in me as a human being? Why am I funding a lifestyle for someone who would never in a million years do the same for me? Why am I allowing myself to be used as an ATM with a pulse? And once men started asking those questions, there was no one asking them. The genie was out of the bottle. And now we're seeing the consequences play out in real time. Let me take you back to how we got here, because this didn't happen overnight. This has been building for 50 years. 50 years of being told that traditional masculinity is toxic. 50 years of being told that men are the problem. 50 years of watching courts destroy men's lives in divorce proceedings while women walk away with the house, the kids, the dog, and half his future income. 50 years of watching boys get drugged in school for acting like boys. 50 years of watching male spaces get invaded and destroyed the moment they become successful. 50 years of hearing the future is female while male college enrollment collapses as is. 50 years of watching every male character in media portrayed as either a bumbling idiot or a violent predator. 50 years of messages telling men they are defective, dangerous, unnecessary. And through all of it, what did men do? They kept showing up. They kept protecting. They kept providing. They kept putting women's needs first. They kept believing if they just tried harder, if they just made more money, if they just became better versions of themselves, women would finally appreciate them. But that appreciation never came. Instead, what came was more demands, more criticism, more shaming, more extraction. Women said, "We don't need men," while simultaneously demanding men pay for everything. They said men are trash while demanding men risk their lives to protect them from other men. They said, "I am the table," while bringing absolutely nothing to it but attitude and expectations. And then something beautiful happened. Men listened. For the first time in history, men actually listened to what women were saying. When women said, "We don't need you," men said, "Okay." When women said, "We can do it all ourselves," men said, "Great, do it." When women said men are toxic, men said, "All right, we'll remove our toxicity from your life." And they did. Quietly, without announcement or fanfare, millions of men just walked away. They stopped dating. They stopped simping. They stopped pursuing. They stopped paying for everything. They stopped putting women's comfort above their own dignity. And they discovered something that terrified the entire system: peace. Because here's what happens when men walk away: they find out that life without the constant drama, the constant criticism, the constant financial extraction is actually pretty fantastic. They start working out and get in the best shape of their lives. They start saving 60, 70, 80% of their income. They travel. They learn new skills. They build businesses. They play video games without guilt. They sleep 8 hours a night. They hang out with other men and remember what real friendship feels like. They discover that solitude is not the same as loneliness. And most dangerously of all, they realize they were never the problem in the first place. And meanwhile, women who thought this was all a bluff, who thought men would never actually leave, who thought the threats of "you'll die alone" would bring men running back, are now waking up to a nightmare reality. The men are gone. The apps are drying up. The high value men they rejected in their 20s and 30s for being too boring or not tall enough or not making enough money yet are now making multiple six figures, driving the cars women wish they had, living in the apartments women wish they could afford, and they're doing it all without a woman draining their resources every month. And these men are not coming back. They have zero incentive. Why would they? They finally have peace. But here's where it gets really interesting. The women who spent years running the foodie scam, who spent years demanding men pay for everything while giving nothing in return, are now finding out what happens when the free ride ends. They're showing up to these expensive restaurants in their best dresses, ordering like queens, and then watching in horror as the man pays exactly his half and leaves. And when they can't pay their half because they genuinely don't have the money, because they've never had to budget in their lives, because they've always had some man somewhere picking up the tab, they do what they've always done when things don't go their way. They make a scene, they cry. They call the man names. They threaten to post him online. And sometimes, when the bill is large enough and they genuinely can't pay, the police get called. And yes, brothers, women are now getting arrested for theft of services because they ordered meals they never intended to pay for. I've seen the videos. You've probably seen them too. A woman outside a steakhouse in tears, hands behind her back, telling the officer, "Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now." But he was supposed to pay. Another woman screaming at restaurant staff, "This is discrimination against women," while security escorts her out. Another woman trying to dine and dash after the man leaves, only to get tackled by staff in the parking lot. These videos are everywhere now, and every single one of them has the same thing in common. The woman genuinely believes some man would save her from the consequences of her own choices. This is what happens when an entire generation of women is raised to believe they are entitled to men's resources without giving anything meaningful in return. This is what happens when "my presence is the gift" becomes an actual dating strategy. This is what happens when women mock men for being broke while simultaneously demanding those same broke men take them to five-star restaurants. The chickens, as they say, are coming home to roost. And they are coming home in handcuffs outside Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And now the mask is completely off. Women are flooding TikTok, Instagram, and every platform they can find with videos that all follow the exact same script. They sit in their cars or in their bedrooms with the ring light glowing, and they say things like, "Where have all the good men gone?" Or "Men ain't men no more," or "I can't believe he left me with the bill. That's not chivalry." Some of them are crying, some of them are angry, a few are trying to play it off like it's a joke, but you can hear the panic underneath every word, because for the first time in their adult lives, the safety net is gone. The invisible army of men who used to rush in to rescue them from every bad decision, every overdraft fee, every moment of discomfort, that army has disbanded. And they never thought it would actually happen. Let me read you some of the comments I've personally seen under these viral videos in the last 30 days alone, because these are real women saying these things with their full chest. One woman wrote, "I went on a date last night and the guy only paid for his half. I had to Venmo my sister $280 to cover my portion because I only brought my debit card with $40 on it. This has never happened to me before. What is happening to men?" Another 142,000 likes. Another woman posted a 15-second clip of herself fake crying and said, "If you won't pay for my meal on the first date, don't ask me out. Simple. I'm not splitting anything. I bring beauty and femininity to the table. That's more than enough." That video has 3 million views, and the comment section is an absolute war zone of men laughing and posting the shrug emoji. Another woman went viral for saying, "Men walking away is domestic terrorism against women." Domestic terrorism. Let that sink in. Men choosing peace over chaos is now being called terrorism. And the best part, the men in the comments aren't even angry anymore. They're amused. They're posting gifs of popcorn. They're writing "cool story, still not paying." The power dynamic has flipped so completely that women are now the ones rage posting at 3 in the morning while men sleep like babies. But let's go deeper, because this isn't just about restaurant bills. This is about an entire social order that has been propped up by male sacrifice for centuries, and that order is collapsing in real time. For decades, women have been told they can have it all: the career, the independence, the freedom, the kids whenever they feel like it, and a man who will pay for everything while asking for little in return. They were told they could ride the carousel into their 30s, rack up a body count that would make a rock star blush, treat good men like disposable tissues, and then, when the biological clock starts making noise, simply announce, "I'm ready to settle down now." and a line of high value men would form to the left, ready to wife them up and fund the lifestyle to which they've become accustomed. That was the promise, that was the script. And millions of women believed it with religious fervor. Except the men woke up one day and discovered the line never formed. The high value men they spent years ignoring, friend zoning, or straight up humiliating are now in their 30s and 40s, financially secure, physically fit, emotionally stable, and completely uninterested in rescuing anyone from the consequences of decades of poor choices. These men watched their fathers get destroyed in divorce court. They watched their older brothers lose everything to false allegations. They watched their friends get Me Too'd for saying hello in an elevator. They watched the culture tell them over and over that their natural instincts were evil, that their desire to lead was toxic, that their desire to protect was patriarchal oppression. And instead of doubling down and begging for female approval like previous generations did, this generation of men simply said, fine, message received, we're out. And when enough men opt out at the same time, the entire system begins to collapse under its own weight. Birth rates plummet, marriage rates plummet, home ownership among single women collapses because they never learned how to budget without a man subsidizing their lifestyle. Credit card debt among women under 35 has absolutely exploded in the last 3 years. OnlyFans earnings are down across the board because the men who used to spend their rent money to simp for e-girls have closed their wallets and started investing in Bitcoin instead. Even the dating apps are laying people off because men have stopped swiping. Bumble stock lost over 80% of its value in 2 years. Think about that. A company whose entire business model was women message first because men are creeps is now bleeding cash because men stopped participating altogether. Women are now posting videos with captions like dating is dead and men have given up, as if this is some mysterious cosmic event that happened to them instead of the completely predictable outcome of of 50 years of telling men they are worthless unless they act as willing pack mules. They act shocked that men no longer want to date up in looks while dating down in effort. They act shocked that men no longer want to be the sole financial provider while being told daily that they are privileged oppressors. They act shocked that men have finally started treating female attention the same way women have treated male attention for decades, as something abundant, low value, and not worth sacrificing peace for. Let me tell you a story that perfectly illustrates where we are right now. About 6 months ago, a woman in Atlanta went viral for posting a TikTok filmed inside her brand new luxury apartment. She was giving a tour, showing off the marble countertops, floor to ceiling windows, the whole influencer package. The caption read, single, childless, debt free, and living my best life at 34. The video got millions of views and thousands of women in the comments cheering her on, calling her a queen, telling her she's winning. 3 months later, she posted a follow up video from the same apartment, but this time she was sitting on the floor surrounded by packed boxes. The caption read, had to break my lease and move back in with my parents because rent went up $800 and my job doesn't pay enough to cover it alone. I never thought this would happen to me. In those 3 months, reality had caught up to the fantasy. The men who used to subsidize that lifestyle through dates, through OnlyFans subscriptions, through send me $200 for my nails, Cash App requests, those men were gone. And when the subsidies dried up, so did the luxury apartment, the designer bags, the bottomless brunch lifestyle. And she's not alone. This story is repeating itself in every major city. Women who spent their 20s living like reality stars on an administrative assistant salary are now moving back home at 30, 35, 40 years old because the economic model they were counting on never materialized. The prince they were promised turned out to be millions of regular men who finally learned the word no. But here's the part that almost no one is talking about yet, and this is where it gets truly biblical. When men walk away en masse, the state steps in to replace them. And the state is a cold, ruthless provider. The state doesn't care about your feelings. The state doesn't care that you're a strong, independent woman who don't need no man. The state doesn't care that you identify as a goddess. The state cares about taxes and social order. And right now, across the Western world, governments are quietly panicking because the tax base is collapsing. When men stop marrying, the state loses massive amounts of revenue from wedding related taxes, from dual income household taxes, from child related tax credits that mostly flow through women. When men stop cohabitating, the state loses the ability to garnish wages directly through family court. When men go minimalist and lower their taxable income on purpose, the state loses again. So, what's the response? They're already floating ideas like bachelor taxes, single man surcharges on everything from apartments to health insurance. In South Korea, they're already doing it. In Europe, they're talking about it openly. Politicians are starting to use phrases like men need to step up and society requires male sacrifice because they can feel the foundation cracking. They need men back on the plantation working 70-hour weeks to fund a system that hates them. And the craziest part? Some women are actually cheering this on. They're posting things like, if men won't provide voluntarily, the government should make them. They have no idea what they're asking for because once the state becomes your provider, you no longer get to negotiate the terms. You no longer get to demand 6 foot plus, six figures, six pack. The state will decide who gets what, and it will not be pretty. We are watching the slow motion collapse of an entire civilization that was built on the assumption that men would never, ever stop providing, no matter how badly they were treated. And now that men have stopped, everything is unraveling faster than anyone predicted. Women are getting arrested for restaurant bills. Birth rates are in free fall. Marriage is becoming a luxury good only the ultra wealthy can afford. Housing prices are collapsing in some areas because there aren't enough dual income households to prop up the bubble anymore. The dating market has turned into a ghost town. And through it all, the men who walked away are living better than they ever have. They're sleeping 8 hours a night. They're eating steak they paid for themselves. They're traveling to countries where their money goes further. And the women still smile when a man walks into a room. They're building wealth at a rate previous generations could only dream of because there's no one at home draining the account every month. They're lifting heavier, running faster, shooting better, learning languages, starting companies, and most importantly, they're doing it all with a level of peace and contentment that no amount of female validation could ever provide. And women are furious about it. They're furious that men found happiness without them. They're furious that peace was possible all along and they were the chaos keeping it from happening. They're furious that the threat of you'll die alone no longer works when men realized dying alone sounds a hell of a lot better than living in misery with the wrong person. They're furious that their power, which was always based on male sacrifice, is evaporating right in front of their eyes. But anger doesn't pay the bill at Morton's. Anger doesn't put gas in the Range Rover you can't afford anymore. Anger doesn't stop the landlord from changing the locks when you're 3 months behind. Anger is all they have left. And even that is running out of steam because there's no one left to perform it for. We are living through the greatest transfer of peace in human history. Millions of men trading chaos for calm, extraction for abundance, resentment for relief. And the women who spent decades telling men to leave are now standing in the wreckage, screaming, "Come back, we didn't mean it." But the door is closed, the table has been flipped, the bill has been split, and men are never ever coming back to the way things were. And now the panic is spreading from the restaurants to every corner of women's lives because once the free meal pipeline shut down, every other pipeline that depended on male labor, male money, and male silence started collapsing right behind it. Let's talk about the apartments first. You've seen the videos, the ones where a 29-year-old marketing coordinator with a $52,000 salary is giving a tour of her dream one bedroom in Miami or Austin or Brooklyn. She's showing off the quartz countertops, the rooftop pool, the gym she never uses, and she's bragging about how she did it all on her own. The comments are filled with fire emojis and Yas Queen energy. 6 months later, the same girl is back on camera, this time with puffy eyes and a shaky voice, filming from her childhood bedroom at her parents' house in the suburbs. The caption reads, Rent went up $900, and my landlord won't renew unless I add a cosigner. I never thought I'd be moving back home at 30. And in the comment section, men are posting one word replies: decisions. Because here's what nobody said out loud in those original apartment tours: that $3,200 a month one bedroom wasn't being paid for with her $52,000 salary alone. It was being paid for with a combination of daddy's credit card when things got tight, a couple of thirsty orbiters sending $300 here and $500 there for rent help, a few high spending first dates every month that turned into grocery money, and the occasional emergency GoFundMe when the car needed tires. All of that invisible subsidies from men who were never going to be her boyfriend, but were perfectly happy to keep the fantasy alive for a few Instagram likes, and the occasional "you're so sweet" text. When those subsidies disappeared overnight, the math no longer worked. And it's not just one girl in Miami. Entire buildings in major cities are sending out mass lease non renewal notices because single women can't qualify on their own income anymore. Property managers are openly saying in industry groups that the default rate among unmarried women under 40 has tripled in the last 24 months. They're requiring cosigners, larger deposits, proof of savings, all the things men have always had to show. And women are finding out for the first time that Boss Babe doesn't impress a credit algorithm. The car dealerships are next. Women are walking onto lots wanting to lease the white G Wagon or the new Range Rover, the one they've been posing in front of for years on Instagram. And the finance manager runs the credit, looks up and says, "Ma'am, your debt to income ratio is 78%, and you have 6 credit cards maxed out. We can't approve you unless you have a cosigner making at least $180,000. And for the first time in her life, she doesn't have a boyfriend, an ex, a situationship, or a male best friend willing to sign. So she leaves the dealership in a base model Corolla that smells like someone else's French fries and posts a TikTok about how car salesmen hate women. Travel influencers who built entire careers flying business class on points bought by simps are now stuck posting throwbacks because nobody's buying them tickets anymore. The girl who used to post, "Who wants to fly me out?" every Thursday is now posting, "Working from home because gas is expensive." The shift is so sudden and so complete that it feels like someone flipped a switch. And the craziest part is that women still don't understand why this is happening. They keep making the same videos. Men don't want to date anymore. Men are intimidated by successful women. Men can't handle a woman who has her own. They refuse to say the quiet part out loud, which is that most of them were never actually successful on their own. They were subsidized heavily for years, and the subsidy program has been permanently canceled. Now, let's talk about the workplaces because that's where the next shoe is dropping. Companies spent the last decade bending over backwards to hire women into roles they weren't qualified for, promoting women faster than men, creating entire women in leadership initiatives, giving women unlimited time off for mental health, while men were expected to work through grief and illness without complaint. And for a while, it worked because there were always enough hardworking men in the lower and middle ranks keeping the machines running while the diversity hires collected bigger checks at the top. But when men started walking away from corporate life in droves, going remote, going freelance, starting one man businesses, or just plain retiring at 40 with a paid off house and a crypto portfolio, the whole house of cards started shaking. Entire departments are now 70, 80, 90% female, and productivity has fallen off a cliff. Deadlines are missed, clients are angry, profits are down, and leadership, which is still mostly old school men at the very top, is starting to ask dangerous questions like, why are we paying 6 figures for roles that produce almost nothing? And why are all the people actually doing the work the ones we keep telling are privileged? We're already seeing the first wave of layoffs hitting female dominated departments the hardest. Companies are quietly getting rid of the culture and inclusion teams, the employee experience teams, the diversity partnerships teams, all the layers of middle management that were created to give women soft landing jobs with big titles and light workloads. And when those women get laid off, they're finding out something terrifying. There are no men left in their DMs offering to help them through this tough time with cash. The same men who would have jumped at the chance to play White Knight 5 years ago are now posting pictures of themselves on beaches in Thailand, living off $2,000 a month while she's refreshing LinkedIn and applying to 50 jobs a week with zero callbacks. Even the beauty industry is taking a hit. Salons are reporting that appointments are down 30 to 40% across the board. Nail techs, who used to have 6-month waiting lists, are now begging clients to book with Bring a Friend and get 50% off deals. Hair extensions companies are going bankrupt. Makeup brands that built entire marketing campaigns around empowerment are watching their sales collapse because the women who were buying $80 foundation to look good for men they never intended to sleep with have finally stopped bothering. The entire get ready with me for a date I'm going to make him pay $400 for and then block him economy is dead. And through all of this, the coping mechanisms are getting more desperate by the day. We've moved past where have all the good men gone into full blown delusion territory. They're now saying things like, I'd rather be alone than settle, while posting crying selfies from their parents' basement. They're saying men are trash while begging the same trash to come back and pay their bills. They're saying I love my own company while making 30 TikToks a day screaming into the void for male attention. The cognitive dissonance is reaching levels that shouldn't be physically possible. Some of them have moved into outright fantasy. There's a whole genre of videos now where women script out elaborate daydreams about how a real man is going to show up any day now, pay off all their debt, buy them the house with the white kitchen, and never ask for anything in return except that she loves him for him. These videos have millions of views, and the comments are all women tagging each other saying, This is going to be us in 2026. They've built an entire religion around a savior who no longer exists. Meanwhile, the men they rejected are sending me DMs that all say the same thing. Bro, I make more money now than I ever have. I sleep like a baby. My blood pressure is down 30 points, and I haven't had a single argument in 3 years. Walking away was the best decision I ever made. These are men who used to be suicidal from the stress of trying to please an ungrateful partner. Now they're sending me pictures of themselves on mountaintops, in brand new trucks they paid cash for, holding fish they caught themselves, with captions like, This is what peace looks like. And the women who used to mock those same men for playing video games or lifting weights in their mom's basement are now realizing those men weren't losers. They were in training, training to live well on less, training to be self sufficient, training to need no one. And now those skills are paying dividends, while the women who laughed are learning what figure it out actually means. We are watching the greatest plot twist in human history. An entire gender that was told they were priceless, discovering they were only valuable as long as someone else was willing to pay the price. And the moment men stopped paying, the value evaporated overnight. The restaurant bill was just the beginning. The apartment, the car, the job, the lifestyle, every single brick in the palace of the modern female privilege was held together with male sacrifice. Remove the sacrifice, and the whole thing comes crashing down. And it is crashing fast, loud, in real time, on camera, for the world to see. And the most delicious part? Men aren't even celebrating. They're not dancing on the grave. They're not making told you so videos. They're just quietly living their best lives while the world they left behind burns. Because real power doesn't need to announce itself, it just walks away and lets the consequences speak. And now we have to talk about the part that almost nobody wants to say out loud. Because once you say it, there's no going back to pretending everything is fine. The birth rate collapse isn't coming, it's already here, and it is accelerating faster than even the most pessimistic demographers predicted 5 years ago. In the United States, we are now at 1.62 children per woman and still falling. South Korea just hit 0.72. Italy, Spain, Japan, all under 1.3. These aren't abstract numbers on a spreadsheet. These are civilization ending trajectories. A society needs roughly 2.1 just to maintain its population without immigration. We are nowhere close, and the gap is widening every single year. And the reason is brutally simple. Men have stopped agreeing to become fathers under the current rules Because fatherhood in 2025 isn't raising children, it's signing a contract that says, I agree to work the rest of my life to fund a woman who can leave at any moment, take my children I will only see 4 days a month, and force me to keep paying her long after she's living with the next guy. That's not hyperbole. That is the observable reality in every Western country with no fault divorce and family courts that treat children as income streams for mothers. Men looked at that deal, looked at their fathers and older brothers who got destroyed by it, looked at the statistics 80% of divorces initiated by women, 90% of custody going to women, lifelong alimony in many states. And they quietly said, hard pass. And once enough men make that decision, at the same time, the entire Ponzi scheme of the welfare state starts to wobble because the modern state was never designed to replace husbands at scale. It was designed to be a safety net, not the primary provider for millions of single mothers and childless women hitting their 40s with no savings. The math never worked for that. The taxes were always dependent on a steady supply of married men working 60-hour weeks to fund both their own families and everyone else's through transfers. But those men are gone now. They're 35, debt free, living in paid off condos, driving 10-year-old trucks they maintain themselves, eating ribeyes they grilled on their own balconies, and putting 70% of their income into assets that women and the state can't touch. They're not angry, they're not protesting, they're just simply refusing to participate in a game that is guaranteed to ruin them. And governments are starting to feel the squeeze in ways they can't hide. Pension systems across Europe are already insolvent on paper. Social Security in the United States is projected to run out of money in less than 10 years at current trends. Public sector unions are screaming because there aren't enough new workers coming in to pay the retirement checks of the boomers. And the response from politicians, they want to import millions of military age men from cultures that still practice traditional gender roles, thinking those men will pick up the slack and fund the system the local men abandoned. Except those new arrivals are figuring out the deal real quick, and within one generation, they're opting out too. The game is up everywhere. So, what's left holding the bag are the women who spent their 20s and 30s telling men they weren't needed. They're 42 now. Frozen eggs didn't work. The cats are overweight. The wine bill is higher than the retirement account. And the government checks they were counting on are getting smaller every year because there aren't enough working men to pay the taxes. And for the first time in their lives, they're hearing the word that men have heard their entire lives. No, no, we're not raising your child support. No, we're not extending your alimony again. No, we're not approving your disability claim because you're stressed. No, we're not bailing out your lifestyle anymore. Figure it out. And figure it out is a phrase women have never had to hear at scale before. Men have been hearing it since childhood. Figure out how to make money, figure out how to fix the car, figure out how to carry the groceries in one trip, figure out how to survive getting laid off, figure out how to keep going after she leaves and takes everything. Men were forged in the fire of figure it out. Women were protected from it until now. Now they're learning what resourcefulness actually feels like when there's no man to call, no father to guilt, no simp to manipulate, no state program that will fully replace a husband. And the learning curve is brutal. I want you to picture something very specific. Picture a 45-year-old former HR manager with a master's degree in gender studies, two kids from different fathers, living in a two-bedroom apartment she can barely afford, scrolling TikTok at 2 a.m., watching videos of the men she rejected at 28 because they weren't ready or didn't have ambition. Those same men are now 43, retired in Southeast Asia or Central America, posting sunrise photos from balconies overlooking the ocean, surfing every morning, dating 26-year-old women who smile when they cook breakfast, living on $30,000 a year like kings, while she's working 60 hours a week to clear $48,000 after taxes. And child support, she still has to pay because she makes more than baby daddy number two. That is not a hypothetical. I get messages from both sides of that equation every single day. The men send me beach photos and say, "Thank you for waking me up 5 years ago." The women send me long paragraphs about how life isn't fair and men need to be held accountable. The contrast has become surreal, and the coping has reached end stage proportions. We now have women openly advocating for forced marriage laws, for mandatory paternity testing bans to be overturned so paternity fraud can continue, for male contraceptives to be banned so men can't control their reproduction, for taxes on single men to redistribute to single mothers. They are no longer even pretending. They are saying the quiet part at full volume. We never actually wanted equality. We wanted superiority disguised as equality. And now that the disguise is off, we demand you come back and submit. But submission requires leverage, and the leverage is gone. The only card they ever had was access, and men have discovered they don't need it nearly as much as they were told they did. Testosterone levels are higher in men who live alone. Depression rates are lower. Suicide rates are plummeting among young men for the first time in decades. Life expectancy for men who never marry is now higher than for married men. All the horror stories about lonely old men dying alone turned out to be projection. The data is in, and it is merciless. Men thrive in solitude, women don't. That's the part they can't process. They were told their entire lives that men would crumble without them, that men would beg, plead, and eventually come crawling back once the loneliness became unbearable. Except the loneliness never came. What came instead was peace, strength, money, health, brotherhood, and options. Real options. The kind of options you have when you're not bleeding resources every month to keep an ungrateful person comfortable. So now the narrative is shifting again. First, it was, we don't need men. Then it was, where are all the good men? Now it's, men are abandoning society and it's a crisis. Next, it will be, men need to be forced back into relationships for their own good. They're already testing that messaging in academic papers and news articles. The same people who spent 20 years calling marriage a tool of patriarchal oppression are now writing panicked op eds about the dangers of male celibacy and the need to remasculinize society by getting men back into provider roles. They want the mule back in the harness, except the mule has tasted freedom and he remembers what the whip feels like. There is no force on earth that will put him back willingly. And that's where we are right now, at the edge of the cliff. One side has accepted reality and is building a new lives on solid ground. The other side is still stamping its foot, demanding the laws of physics change because feelings. And every day the ground crumbles a little more under the second group, while the first group keeps walking farther away, lighter, happier, richer, stronger. The restaurant bill was only the first domino. We've watched the apartments fall, the cars get repossessed, the jobs disappear, the lifestyle collapse, the birth rate implode, the state scramble, and the coping turn into open desperation. And we haven't even hit the bottom yet. There are still millions of men who haven't fully walked away. There are still millions of women who think this is a phase that will pass if they just shame hard enough. There are still entire industries and government programs built on the assumption that men will keep sacrificing forever. Those are the next dominoes. And when they fall, the sound is going to be deafening. But the men who already left, they won't even turn around to look. They'll be too busy living the kind of life previous generations of men could only dream about while being told it was their duty to suffer. That's the real red pill. Not anger, not revenge, not even justice. It's peace. And once a man tastes real peace, there is no offer, no threat, no law, no amount of shaming that will ever make him trade it away again. And now we reach the part where the story stops being about dates, bills, apartments, birth rates, or even the slow motion collapse of an entire civilization built on male sacrifice. Now we reach the part where it becomes personal, where every man watching this has to look in the mirror and decide what kind of life he is going to live for the rest of his days on this earth. Because everything I've laid out for the last 2 hours isn't theory, it isn't speculation. It isn't some future dystopia that might happen if we don't change course. It is happening right now, today, in every city, every suburb, every small town across the Western world. And the only question left is, which side of history are you going to be on? Are you going to be the man still sitting at the table, hoping that if you just pay one more bill, just tolerate one more disrespect, just be patient one more year, that somehow she will finally see your value and reward you with the peace and loyalty you were promised? Or are you going to be the man who stands up, pays exactly what he owes and nothing more, walks out the door, and never looks back? Because that moment, the moment you decide to walk, is the moment your real life begins. I want you to think about the average man 5 years ago, stressed out of his mind, working a job he hated to pay for a woman who didn't respect him, coming home to arguments and criticism, scrolling his phone at 1 a.m., looking for an escape, carrying 35 extra pounds, blood pressure through the roof, bank account empty 2 days after payday, sleeping 4 hours a night because he was terrified of losing everything he'd worked for if he didn't keep performing. And now look at that same man today, 5 years after he finally said enough. He's 40 pounds lighter because he started lifting and eating meat. He grills himself. He sleeps 8 hours like clockwork. He makes the same money, often more, but now 70% of it stays in his own pocket. He lives in a small, paid off apartment or house with no one to argue about the thermostat. His phone is silent except for messages from other men planning fishing trips or gym sessions. He wakes up on Saturday with zero obligations except whatever he chooses. He has a passport full of stamps from places he always wanted to visit, but was told were irresponsible. He has a brokerage account that grows every month because there's no one spending it faster than he can earn it. He has peace. Real, deep, unshakable peace. The kind of peace men used to think only came from female approval. Turns out it was waiting on the other side of no. That man is not rare anymore. That man is everywhere. He's your coworker who suddenly looks 10 years younger. He's the quiet guy at the gym adding plates every week. He's the neighbor who sold the big house, bought a smaller one with cash, and now travels 6 months a year. He's the friend you haven't heard from in a while because he doesn't need to vent anymore. He's living proof that everything you were told about needing a woman to be complete was a lie sold to keep you on the plantation. And the most dangerous part for the old system is that this new way of living is contagious. Once one man does it and thrives, 10 more see it, then 100, then 1,000, then millions. And there is no propaganda campaign strong enough, no shaming tactic vicious enough, no law harsh enough to pull them back once they've tasted what real freedom feels like. That is why the videos from women are getting louder and more desperate every single week. They can feel the ground disappearing beneath them. They can see the peace in men's eyes, and they hate it because that peace is the final indictment of everything they were told was supposed to make them happy. They were told chaos was empowerment. They were told extraction was strength. They were told male sacrifice was their birthright. And now they're watching millions of men live better lives than they ever imagined possible without giving those women a single dime or a single minute of attention. And the coping has now entered its final stage, bargaining. They're making videos that say, okay, we admit we went too far. Just come back and we'll be traditional now. They're posting pictures in sundresses, standing in kitchens, holding pie with captions like, I can cook and clean if you provide. They're starting podcasts called Bring Men Back, where they interview each other about how feminism was a test and men failed by not enduring it longer. They're writing articles with headlines like, maybe chivalry wasn't so bad after all. They're flooding dating apps with new profiles that say, looking for a real man who leads, after spending 10 years saying any man who leads is masculine is toxic. But here's the problem with bargaining when you've already burned the bridge. Nobody believes you anymore. Men have watched the pattern repeat too many times. Meet a girl who says she's traditional, move her in, pay all the bills while she finds herself. Watch her get bored the moment life is too stable. Watch her blow up the relationship the moment a higher status man shows interest, or the moment the attention on social media dries up. Then watch her immediately go back to calling men controlling for wanting commitment. Men have seen that movie, they know how it ends, and they're no longer willing to buy a ticket. The trust is gone permanently. And trust, once destroyed at civilizational scale, does not come back in a single generation, maybe not even in two or three. That is the real great awakening. Not that men are angry, most aren't anymore, but that men are simply done performing, done sacrificing, done apologizing, done participating in a system that only takes and never gives back. And in the vacuum left behind, something new is being born. Men are building parallel societies, gyms that don't allow women to film, barbershops that are men only sanctuaries again, online communities where men share market tips, travel hacks, fitness protocols, and real estate deals without a single thirst trap or drama thread in sight, crypto groups that move millions without a single government or female gatekeeper, men's retreats in the mountains where the only rule is no phones and no complaining about the past, churches and temples filling up with young men looking for meaning that doesn't involve female approval, apprenticeships, trades, remote businesses, digital nomad visas, all male spaces where competence is the only currency and peace is the default setting. Women are not invited to most of these new spaces, not because men hate them, but because men finally understand that peace requires boundaries. And the first boundary is no chaos allowed. That is the future being built right now by the men who walked away. Not a future of anger or revenge, but a future of quiet strength, brotherhood, competence, wealth, health, and freedom. A future where a man's value comes from what he can build, not what he is willing to suffer. A future where peace is the default, not the exception. And the women who spent decades demanding men leave are now realizing too late that when men actually leave, they don't just disappear, they go build something better without you. So if you're still sitting there wondering whether to stay in that relationship that drains you, whether to keep paying for dates with women who don't respect you, whether to keep working the job that kills you to fund a lifestyle that isn't even yours, let me make it simple. Walk, just walk. Pay your half, stand up, leave the table, and never look back. The first step feels terrifying. The second step feels uncertain. By the 10th step, you'll feel your shoulders drop for the first time in years. By the 100th step, you'll be smiling for no reason. By the 1,000th step, you'll wonder why you ever waited so long. And there is an army of men on the other side waiting to welcome you, men who have already done it. Men who will show you how to rebuild your body, your bank account, your boundaries, and your life. Men who understand that real brotherhood isn't competing for female attention. It's building each other up so no man ever has to kneel again. That army is growing every single day, and it grows by one every time another man chooses himself over chaos. So choose right now. Today, not tomorrow, not next month, not after one more try. Today. Because every day you stay is another day you rob yourself of the peace that is already waiting for you. And every day you walk is another day you add to a future where men are free, strong, wealthy, healthy, and untouchable. That future is here. The door is open. All you have to do is walk through it. And once you do, you'll never go back. I promise you that. Now, I want to hear from you. What did you think about everything we just went through? Do you agree this is the greatest shift in male female dynamics in recorded history? Are you already walking or are you still on the fence? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Like the video if you like it, don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.